Since last November 8th, I believe, maybe the 9th, I have been saying, let's set our sights on the EPA. The governor has been in office for 9 years, and last week he finally decided maybe Texas should sue the EPA. If you cared about Texas, you'd be protecting Texas, sir. Get the EPA out of Texas. Interposition is the other tool that the founders mentioned. Interposition is an executive tool. This is a republic too. We've got an executive branch, legislative branch, and a judicial branch. And the executive can say to the agencies in Texas, you're not going to enforce federal law. You have no authority to do that. You're not going to take money from Texas to enforce federal law and Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. You are not going to enforce EPA rules and regulations on farmers, ranchers, manufacturers, and energy providers in the state of Texas. The EPA has no authority here. You get the EPA off the backs of businesses in Texas, and you begin to prosper again. I had a mayor and a mayor pro tem at the stockyard in Fort Worth 2 hours ago say to me, Deborah, the EPA is killing our town. We have 1,000 people in our town. We can't do water and we can't do sewer because of the hoops we have to jump through for the EPA. I had forgotten about how involved the EPA is even in that area. If Texas needs laws regulating farmers and ranchers, energy providers, and manufacturers, then Texas has the authority to do that, but Washington, D.C. does not. We will not eradicate that cancer overnight. Washington invades every organ of this body called Texas. And we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get rid of it overnight. But when that health care bill passed, I said, we better draw a line in the sand, by golly, and say, you've taken all you're going to take. You're not getting 1 more inch in Texas. I saw Senator John Cornyn in the airport in November after the health care bill had passed the House, but while it was still being debated in the Senate. And I said to Senator Cornyn, sir, I introduced myself and said, sir, are you aware that 13 states have introduced nullification language against health care? And he said, no, I'm not. Thank you for letting me know. I'll look into that. And I said, if Texas were rattling the saber, if we were saying you want to go outside of the Constitution, you go right ahead, but you're not coming into our state. We're going to fight you tooth and nail every step of the way. We're going to fight you with 13 other states. Would that check your action in the Senate? Don't you know that it would? If the Senate knew that 14 states were going to challenge what they were doing in federal court, would it make them think twice about how much they were trying to take and what they were trying to do? Especially if some of those senators that were on the fence were from those states that were fixing to sue them, that were fixing to tell them no. That congressman said to me, not Senator Cornyn, the congressman that I met with said to me, Deborah, in addition to the Attorney General filing suit challenging the constitutionality of the bill, which he can do if we don't do anything, if you can give him that second stick of dynamite, the nullification of that health care bill, you might also ask him to get an injunction against the IRS. Because see, when that bill gets signed, every one of us is subject to an additional IRS penalty for each month or portion thereof that you don't have the acceptable health insurance policy. You're going to have an additional penalty to pay on your IRS return. If the Attorney General gets an injunction against the IRS until such time as that bill is fully litigated and we know whether or not it's constitutional or not, you would be protected from paying that additional penalty. As it stands today, you're going to have to pay that penalty in 6 or 8 or 10 years from now when they finally decide what they did was unconstitutional. You're not going to see that money. You may get a refund. But if you had an injunction, you'd be protected and you could decide. Some of you would pay the penalty in hopes you'd get that refund. And others of you say, no, I'll hold on to that money, and if we lose that lawsuit and I have to pay later, I'll pay later, but I'm not paying today. That's how your state stands in the gap and protects her citizens. We haven't had anybody standing in the gap protecting Texas in a long time. And you're feeling it, and I'm feeling it, and I've had enough. And so I got into this David and two Goliaths fight a year ago. When people said, she'll never go anywhere, she won't even be a blip on the screen. And I said from the very beginning, here's my commitment, Texas. I'm going to work my butt off from now until March 2nd, 2010 at 7 p.m. I'm not going to let up 1 inch. The outcome of this race really has nothing to do with me. One person working real hard for a year isn't going to affect the outcome of this race. The choice is really yours. How hard are you going to work from now until then to change our course? And thankfully for us, Texans began to step up and stand shoulder to shoulder, and it wasn't long till we were at 3% in the polls, and then we were at 4%, and then we were at 7%, and then we got word that we were going to get in a debate. And look out. And DJs in Dallas said to me, no pressure now, honey. You're in the debate with two political titans, and God was good, and I went into that debate, and I studied, and I prepared, and we won that debate. And then it started to get real interesting. Then we got to 16%. And then we got the pressure, why don't you just sit down and be quiet already, because all you're going to do is drain the resources of the Republican Party and cause Kay and Rick to have a runoff, and why don't you just get over there and be quiet? And we kept going, and people were beginning to say, uh-oh, she's not just going to cause a runoff, she's going to be in a runoff.